Hi, this is Pat McDonald, your host for Vote for Vermont, where our tagline is Listening Beyond the Soundbites. Very special show today. I want to introduce you to our guest. It's Don Stevens, who is the chief of the Nulhegan Abenaki Band. Did I come close, Don?
Close. Nulhegan Band of Cusack.
Nulhegan,
Yep.
but it's band.
Band.
It's band,
Yes.
okay. And Melody Walker Brook, who is the chair of the Vermont Commission on Native American Affairs. Welcome, both of you. I'm very excited. I'm going to give our viewers a little bit of your background, and if I mess something up, maybe you can fill in the blanks. Don's a former chair of the Vermont Commission on Native American Affairs. He served as a committee member on the Native American Quadricentennial Committee, and he speaks on issues of Native American sovereignty, and Abenaki identity. He's a drummer and a singer and a talented storyteller. So says the article.
So
Anything else we need to know?
No, just basically we're doing everything we can just to help our children and promote our culture. So
That's great.
We do what we have to do.
That's a good thing. And Melody is an educator, activist, and artist. She's an adjunct professor at Champlain College and teaches Native American history and culture, Native American worldview and spirituality, and Abenaki and their neighbors. And she has done a lot of research on Abenaki spirituality and also about the Abenaki revitalization movement, which we'll talk about later. Did I miss anything? Busy people. Okay, so Melody, let's start with you. Could you tell us about the Abenaki, their history, their people? And I thought interesting when we talked about where people are living.
Sure. Don, feel free to jump
Yes,
in
please.
anytime.
This is a conversation, so just jump right in.
So as of now, there are 4 state-recognized bands. There is the COAS, and they are located in around like Orange County and in New Hampshire near like Pike, New Hampshire area. There's the Nulhegan Band, which Don is the chief of, and they're in the Northeast Kingdom. And the El New Abenaki Band, which is my band, is located based around Jamaica, Vermont. And I grew up at Missisquoi, the 4th band, which is in Swanton, Vermont area in Franklin County. And we have been here for more than 10,000 years, and we will be here for another at least. So hopefully we'll find out. But our history, I think there's a lot of resources out there. So if people want to be educated, they can definitely go on to like the Vermont Abenaki Artists Association, and they can look at all the resources that we have in terms of books and movies and different things to learn about us. I think the most important thing to know about our history is that it's really one about resiliency and survival. So if you think about us being here with the glaciers, right? And being maritime archaic hunters versus agriculturalists and what we look like today. So all people are part of living cultures, and we definitely are. We're still here, and we look the way that we do, and we're just trying to go forward so that our children can have really positive experiences and know themselves.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, let me just ask you, because when I did my little research, the Nulhegan is called a band. The Missisquoi is called a tribe. Is there a difference between tribe and band, or just what the group wants to call itself?
Well, I think some of us, we're all kind of tribes. We're recognized tribes under the state law. Right. But historically, there were family bands, and those families would travel from place to place, be nomadic, and travel around the state and throughout New England and Canada. And then they would get together with a group of families, which would then, like at a rendezvous or something, and start discussing territory. There'd be marriages, there'd be exchanges of art, you know, how to weave a basket or how to do quill work or other things, and then there would be meetings happening amongst all the families. So that would kind of make up the modern day tribal council. So each family band, so we use the word band to honor those historical families.
Okay.
But we are all technically a Indian tribe.
Okay, great.
So that's hope that answers your question.
You know, yes, actually, because the Elnu is one of the research said tribe, and the Cossack said band. But that was in the research. I don't know. I was wondering if there was not a legal, but a definite definition of you can use band with so many people and tribe with so many people. But you certainly explained it.
Well, and also if you look at the statute, the Coassuck of their legal name is Coassuck of the Coas, which means they're from the Coas Meadows. So they just in their website and how they talk about themselves, they may talk about themselves as a band or a tribe,
Yeah.
but I mean the legal entity is the Coassuck of the Coas. So that doesn't have tribe or band
Yeah,
in
no,
it. So,
exactly.
So, but I'm saying is we're all the same. It's really technically we're a tribe, but we honor our family roots and our family
great.
bands.
Very nice.
And that's why we also come from various tribes, like Missisquoi. Melody has said she grew up in Missisquoi, but she's part of Elnu. Just like myself, I mean, we had family members in Missisquoi and family members in Nulhegan, so I could be part of either one because we're all related.
Great.
And
well, it's all under the umbrella of Abenaki, correct?
Correct.
Yeah. So.
Yeah, correct.
Right.
And tribe and band are anthropological designations, and so we would not necessarily have called ourselves, right? We're the people.
Yeah, right. I like that. You won state recognition in 2011 and 2012. After many years of trying, I actually knew Homer St. Francis, the former chief of the Missisquoi Abenaki, correct? And they worked on this for a long, long time. I don't know why it took 2 years, whether it was statutes, different statutes that took place in 11 and then 12. In the research I did, it said there was two years back to back where recognition was finally achieved in 2012.
Well, I can kind of allude a little bit to that because I was part of the whole process. And basically in 2000, prior to 2010, we had tried to get recognition through the state of Vermont. In 2006, we got minority status, but that wasn't recognition. That was just identifying us as a minority within the state. So we kept submitting applications to the legislators to recognize us as Indigenous people and individual tribes to be covered under the Indian Arts and Crafts Act, because you have to be a citizen of a recognized state or federal tribe, not just a minority, right? In order to sell our arts and crafts. Well, I don't want to say arts and crafts, but our artistry. So anyway, so we kept submitting our information to the legislators, but they didn't know who an Indian was and who wasn't, right? So they came to us and said, let's come to be united, come to us together. And in 2010, they formed a criteria of this is what you have to meet in order to be a legal Indian in the state of Vermont. So Nulhegan and Elnu's application were already completed because we've been submitting them to the legislators. So we had to refine them to meet the criteria. We happened to be done in time, so we submitted it and went through the entire process. And then the year later, Missisquoi and Coassuck, we helped them. We helped, provide a pathway, so that way their application was a little easier because we'd already paved the way. We were the kind of the test proof.
Did they work with you on setting the criteria, because they're not exactly experts on what is an Indian?
What they tried to do originally is we worked with I helped work on this as well as others, worked with the legislators, and the Attorney General had talked to the Bureau of Indian Affairs. They tried to mimic somewhat the federal recognition rules, but they didn't want it to be truly the federal recognition rules, because then they would be afraid that we would have federal recognition if we can meet the federal rules, right? So they kind of turned it a little bit to meet the essence of the federal regulations to be recognized as a federal tribe. However, they wanted to put in the aspects of what makes us state Vermont, right? So we kind of worked with them, and they also consulted with the Bureau of Indian Affairs and see what was legal, what wasn't legal, and that's really how the process ended up.
Are you still looking to get federal recognition?
I don't think any of us are looking for federal recognition. I think we wouldn't get, if it happened, we'd be okay with it. But I'm saying is it takes like 20 years and $20 million, and there's a whole process of lobbying, and you really need the state behind you.
Yeah.
And also part of our discussions with the legislators at the time is that we weren't really looking for federal recognition. We just wanted to exist.
Right. At home.
Because, if you look at it, we were legally extinct, until 2011. Before that, we were still here, but legally in the eyes of the law, we weren't.
So what benefits does recognition grant you, besides being able to sell your artistry? Is there anything else that comes along with that recognition?
I think it paves the way. So other than not going to jail for selling your art and being fined large fines,
right.
It paves the way for other relationships to be created, right? So John is on exactly a bazillion committees with the state, and everyone's forming all of these really great partnerships with like the Forest Service, and we were just talking with the Council on Aging and Disabilities, I think it's called.
Yep.
And so there's all of these little partnerships that are being created, and I think that it helps other people validate for them their existence, our existence.
I bet everybody, the people must have been really excited when that recognition finally came to fruition.
Well, and like we said before, it's from my end, because I deal a lot in the political world and Indian country itself, is that by being vetted by the state, even though it sounds weird, but being vetted by the state gave us some legitimacy by other tribal nations who did not know us, figuring that if we went through an extensive process, because we had to be vetted by scholars, then we had to be accepted by the Native American Commission, then we had to have hearings in the House, and then it went to the House floor, hearings in the Senate, and then in the Senate floor, and then it had to go through the AG, and then the governor had to sign it. If we didn't prove ourselves in any one of those steps, we wouldn't be here talking about recognition. We always knew who we are. It's in our heart. A card doesn't mean anything. But the benefits are it gave our citizens validation that they could be proud of who they are in a cultural sense when so many years they've been told that they weren't who they are. And it validates all of that pain, even though we didn't need it, it paves ways for our children to go to the next level. And I think that
I love that explanation.
Yeah.
And at the other end of the scale too, while we talked about the 2006 bill, and we talked about 11 and 12, and just in that general time frame, this has been a struggle. If you look at Homer, going back through the 70s.
Well, I was in state government for 20 years, and every time I go up to the State House, there'd be something going on.
So this fight for identity has been decades long.
Right.
And if you really look at the first time it was taken away, because I believe it was executive order by Salmon.
Yep.
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know that.
And then it was immediately when the next governor came in, it was taken away.
Oh.
By Richard Snelling.
By Snelling. And
look that up.
It's been interesting because if you think about it, so I was on the commission in 2010 to 2012. And when we were doing this whole process. And I remember before I got on the commission, I had this beaded bag that I was working on, and it sat next to my bed until 2012. So all those years, and thinking about all the people who have been fighting just to be something, at what point can you just be? And people just, leave you alone, and, then you can move on and you can move forward as a community where the whole fight for identity, all those identity wars are done.
Right.
And so nothing better exemplifies that whole process than me being able to actually be something and pick up that bag and beat it, right? Like, and to finish it after all those years.
That's great. I think it was better, not as, an executive order is always sort of tenuous, so it's much better that you went through the process in the legislature, the whole process.
That's why we did it, so it couldn't be just yanked away.
Yeah, right.
But
I'm just surprised he did that. I'm going to have to look why.
Well, it was because of this, people were thinking, oh, you're going to get free hunting and fishing. Oh, there's going to be casinos. Oh, there's going to be land claims. There's going to be a whole bunch of things that they put in our existing bill for recognition to make sure we can't do. No. But I just want to hammer home the significance of this is that when your grandmother is ridiculed and is on a list for sterilization and changes her name to avoid the sterilization and deny her existence, how painful that is.
Right.
And some of us said, before our mothers pass away, we're going to make sure they're proud of who they are.
I bet they were.
Because they've been denied so long. So when we got recognition, our elders could like my mother, she danced for the first time.
Oh.
And
I think you're going to get me crying here.
Well, me too. What I'm saying
I'm
is,
switch this topic.
but how proud of a moment. And you have
Wonderful.
to understand that with us, we can't self-declare. See, every other race can self-declare. We have to prove who we are. Like if you say you're African American, you're covered under affirmative action, and people can't.
Nobody challenges you.
You say you're Indian, you have to have a card in your wallet and prove that you're on a roll, on an Indian tribal roll, in order to be a legal Indian. Otherwise, you don't exist. So that's what I'm saying is we have a higher bar that we have to prove, and that's why it's so much more special. Because we can't just say we're Indian. We had to prove it. Even though we know it, legally we had to prove it. And no other race has to do that. We're the only race that has to prove it.
You could ask the question why, and we'd have another hour show. Anyway.
Identity politics goes,
I know, exactly.
go forever.
That doesn't sound right to me, but anyway. So, Don, you've talked about, in some of the things I've read about, you talk about sovereign nation. Mm-hmm. What does that term mean in the Abenaki world of what is a sovereign nation?
Well, if you're talking about in our world or the normal world, the normal everyday, sovereignty to us is you are self-governing and self-sufficient. That's what real sovereignty is, where you don't rely on anybody for support and you make your own decisions, right? We have this big debate all the time that, you know, some people can't exist within their own realm, right? So how sovereign are they, right? To us, we had nothing. So we could sustain ourselves. And also we have a government of our own that is on the same level as the state of Vermont. That's why we have government to government relationships, because that's what sovereignty affords you, is that you can go to the governor as a chief and say, we have to have a dialogue. Right. Or you can go to legislators and say, you need to listen to us so we can have a dialogue, because we are sovereign and we want to work with you on an equal level, not just as a citizen, but as a government. Right. So we are a government within the government, and sovereignty to me is self-sufficiency and governing yourself.
That's great. So so you have the 4 tribes or bands, and there's a chief of each one of those.
Correct.
Is there anyone over the 4 chiefs, or do the chiefs work as a committee or a crew? Who sort of is over all the Abenaki, if I'm making sense?
There's not really. I mean, Mel can answer this if she wants, but I mean, our tribal councils decide how we move forward, and the chief is a position.
So you could do something different than the other 3 tribes, and that's your right to do that, whatever that may mean.
Right, but we do work together. That's why we formed a thing called an Abenaki Alliance. So that way we work together on issues.
Right. Well, there's, what is it? force and strength in numbers, right?
But
So,
Mel might be able to
yeah.
have more input on this. So.
No, because I was going to ask you, Mel, to talk about the commission that you're on and when that was formed and what your charge is from the state.
Sure. So if people look up our website,
Yeah.
right on the website it has everything that we do.
It's a great
and-
website, by the way. I was
Yeah.
searching all through it. It was great.
Yeah, so
Great
our
pictures.
official charge is the Vermont Commission on Native American Affairs is charged by law to recognize the historic and cultural contributions of Native Americans in Vermont, to protect and strengthen Native American heritage, and to address needs in state policy, programs, and actions. The Commission provides technical assistance on the application process for state recognition of Indian tribes and reviews the documentation of applicants. The Commission develops policies and programs to benefit the Vermont state indigenous population.
So what's some of the things that have come to you? Because you're stepping down soon. I think that looks like several people are switching roles in the association. But what sort of things do you work on that come to you on a regular basis?
Sure. So basically all of that was to say that whatever the tribes need or indigenous people need, we'll help them do.
Good job.
That's
putting it simply, right?
Yeah. And so it's really, really important to cultivate positive relationships with each of the bands. And it isn't just the bands that are here in Vermont, it is also indigenous people who are moving here. So, we have people like Beverly Little Thunder who are doing a lot of really great work in the state and supporting different communities that are coming in. So it isn't just Abenaki people here, but we are the indigenous people of Vermont.
Right.
So some of the things we've been working on, like Rich Holshoe, he has been working on policy for Indigenous Peoples Day. And he has been working with the governor each year to get the executive order signed for, instead of Columbus Day, it's Indigenous Peoples Day.
Oh, right, yes. Now, I actually thought that was passed, but you told me it wasn't. For some reason, I thought that was a done deal. What happened?
We would have liked
Yes,
it to have
I
been.
just...
It's only as an executive order right now. So.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
You're
But
better off going through the legislature, right? If it gets to be executive order, just to make it a... Because they can't take
We're
it away
trying.
once you get it.
But I also want to let you know that, because I was on the first commission that was formed, I was appointed, and I
Right.
believe you asked when it was started
Yeah.
in 2006. I was appointed by Jim Douglas, Governor
okay,
Douglas at the
Governor
time.
Douglas,
We started the first, we were part of the,
Right.
before then there was an advisory committee, which there was a lot of people that were on that advised the governor, but the official commission, Vermont Commission on Native American Affairs, was
Right.
in 2006. But the biggest issue that we have, and that's why we struggle so much, is that those commissions are unfunded. It's hard to really do anything when you have
Yeah,
no
no
money,
money,
to do.
right.
You're supposed to support housing and healthcare and social and artistry,
With no
but
money.
you have no money.
Right.
And they just recently got money just to even for gas. I mean, just for getting
So we
the
should get to
stipends.
the meetings.
Oh,
So before that, you didn't even
Wow.
get those.
wow.
So-
Now, I know you have an issue with education in this state and what's being taught, and could you, I don't know who is better to talk about this, but about your kids and what you'd like to see taught.
I know you guys have Title VII as well as Missisquoi, so you can take it if you.
Well, I just originally part of the commission's charge. You have to understand that when the commission was first formed, it was supposed to have the support of the Department of Historic Preservation and the Department of Education. And since in recent iterations of the bill, the Department of Education has dropped off as a support of the commission. Now, why? I don't know the answer to that question, but I'm just throwing that out there. Like our goal was to get the Department of Education to distribute our curriculum to all the schools so they could teach about our kids and who we are, because the schools don't teach about it unless the teacher themselves or the supervisory union wants to work with us to then educate about Vermont Abenaki. Now we have a thing called Title VII Indian Education, which is a federal program. Nulhegan has that program in Orleans and in North Country Supervisory Union, where we have after-school programs to teach kids drumming and some of the culture. And Missisquoi has it up at Franklin County, up in the elementary school and the high school, Missisquoi Valley Union. So there are some programs, but it's by far statewide.
Because how many Abenaki are we talking about? I don't know if you said you had a number when we talked. Is there some kind of number that's used with how many people are there?
It depends.
We won't challenge because I
No,
would
no,
have
no,
no way of knowing.
No, I'll tell you. I mean, it depends. Like we may have 1,500 citizens in our
Right.
tribe dispersed, and same with maybe Missisquoi, right?
Right.
Those are on tribal rolls, right? And Elnu and Coassuck
Right.
are smaller, but there are a lot more people because I'll use my family for instance. You know, I have say 12 aunts and uncles. I may have 4 on the rolls, but others may not
Right.
want to be on the
Right.
rolls, so they're Abenaki,
Yeah.
but they're just not on the roll,
Huh.
right? And there are a lot of families like that because some families are still afraid to be a part of your tribe from fear of being treated differently.
Sure, sure.
And then there are others that they just don't want anything to do with it. And that's why we're here to try to change that, to allow people to be proud of who they are and not be
Right.
afraid to be Native.
Especially for the children.
Right.
I
and
mean,
that's-
especially if you're in a class with other kids, everybody likes to share their Italian background, their Scottish background, their Abenaki background, I would think.
Yeah, and we're trying to do it that's outside of just Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
Right, because you always
exactly.
get all the calls
Yeah,
in
right.
November saying, "Hey, you know, we got
Right.
Thanksgiving play coming up." You know,
And Native History Month,
It is.
all in the same
so,
line.
So, you know, our goal is, in order to, people fear things they don't understand. So if we can get our children to be
Yeah.
taught about who we are, then other children can say, "Hey, I'm Abenaki," and then they feel more comfortable.
Right,
and then the
for sure.
parents would feel more comfortable.
Oh,
But who wants to put their children potentially in jeopardy?
because kids can do a number on other kids if they so choose to.
And- yeah.
But I bet they'd find it fascinating. I would think kids.
Some do, and some
don't.
we still have a lot of hate out there against
Oh,
us.
Really?
We absolutely have a lot of hate out there against us, which in this day and age is crazy.
And especially
Yeah,
lateral violence
Yeah.
from
What
other
is that?
lateral oppression from other Indigenous people.
Oh, you'll have to explain that more. I'm sorry.
Well,
I'm a
let me
little
let me
dense.
say you have within tribes themselves, you have federally recognized, you have state recognized, and you have none that are recognized at
Right.
all. Well, in between those, some could think they're better than others
Oh,
because
I
of the
see, right.
status they might have,
Right.
or some people who have family issues with each other might say, "Well, you're no good, you're not real,"
Right.
you know,
Right.
and it's just
It's
no,
I
ridiculous.
understand. Yeah.
Yes.
I have a friend of mine in Tarrytown where I came from, and it's all there are a lot of Spanish people there, and it's all about whether you speak high Spanish or
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, local Spanish or whatever, and they really do a number on you if you don't speak the accepted high Spanish. So it's probably the same sort of thing, not quite, but anyway, that's sad.
One of the things, so just to go back to education for
Yeah.
a little bit, one of the things that we'll be working on tomorrow, and we've partnered with the Vermont Abenaki Artists Association with Vera Longtoshian and the Lake Champlain Maritime Museum every year has been hosting basically a teaching the teachers.
Really?
And so Indigenous people, so we'll be 2 of the instructors.
I'll see you tomorrow.
Nice.
Yay!
Where is this happening?
The Maritime Museum in
Oh, I
Vergennes.
love that place. That is a great. We found that, my husband and I, just we take trips, let's go ride, and we found it. And I said, I didn't even know it was there about 2 years ago.
lovely.
It's fabulous.
Well, we also have to put in a plug because they have been a supporter long before recognition has happened. Same with Echo Center.
Oh,
They
I'm
were
sure.
one of the 2. Both of those business entities have supported the Abenaki people
That's
for
great.
a long time.
That's great. The Echo
And-
Center is a
and-
special place too.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the Vermont Abenaki Artists Association, you're a member. You must be a member too, right? What is that about?
Good.
Well, part of when we got recognition,
Right.
the chiefs got together and said, part of recognition is to sell your things as
Right.
Indian under the Indian
Right.
Arts and Crafts Act. So we wanted to create a space where artists could go and sell their wares, but also so people who were buying these things would know it was authentic
Yeah, right,
Indian
right.
Abenaki made. Because you got
Right.
to understand, there was no legal Abenaki stuff out there until 2011 because we weren't recognized unless you were buying it from the foreign government, because Odanak is
Oh.
and Woolanak are Abenaki up in
in
Canada, but they're
right.
a foreign government,
Right.
right? But here, local. So there's some collectors markets like museums that look for things that are made from indigenous Abenaki here, and also so to the collector it would matter more that it was authentic, but to the average every Joe person that just loves say a black ash basket, just wants to get one that's made from an authentic Abenaki person. So it's kind of a conduit for people looking for art, Abenaki art, and a place for our people to be able to distribute.
And where do you have a place now that
it's
you
not
can?
a physical place.
Not a physical.
It is a
Can you
visit
get
the
it through the
website.
association, anything, or do you sell online, or?
There's individual links to each of the artists.
Oh, okay.
And also places like when we have the Abenaki Heritage Celebration at the Maritime Museum every year, we'll have vendors, and
the Church
John
Street event that
just
we just
did.
Oh, nice.
Yeah,
good.
so they
'Cause
just
you were
work with Church
telling me
Street.
that you were looking at a rest area as a place. Wouldn't that be perfect? 'Cause
It would be.
The Sharon one is just spectacular.
And you're working on?
Yeah, we're always looking for places. Part of the deal that I made with the mayor of Burlington,
Yes, you have an agreement with him.
Yeah,
right?
that I should say. Well, I spearheaded it, but it's on behalf of all the Abenaki Alliance tribes. Is we are creating a museum, a permanent display at the Burlington International Airport.
Oh, that's
We're working
fabulous.
with Gene Richards and Rod Redman and the mayor. So we're they're building it, but we need funds to be able to put things in it and also to help complete
that's
it.
wonderful.
Because a lot of airports around the country celebrate their indigenous cultures by putting it in the airports, because as travelers come through, they can see the rich culture.
Welcome to Vermont.
So we're doing the same.
Oh, that's great.
But we're really needing help to get that off the ground, because we don't really have a permanent museum other than the Maritime Museum. They have a permanent display there, and we
Echo.
have they have a periodic. I don't know if it's permanent, but they have
some items.
They have some items.
Yeah.
So we
cool.
that's why we're always looking for places to be able to put our displays
Nice.
so people can learn about us.
Oh, exciting! I love the jewelry and stuff.
The Artists Association too. I just want to say it goes beyond art, in that when you go onto that site, you can look at all of this information, knowledge that people still have, traditional skills that people are still utilizing that never went away. So it's also a display of, like, we're here, we are indigenous people, this is part of our culture, and it always has been and it always will be. So it's also a statement about our community and the health of the people and the vibrancy of our culture that is still here.
And storytelling is very important to you. I read before that you are a storyteller, and a lot of things are not written down, correct? So it's got to be passed on to generation to generation. Is that part of what goes on a regular basis within your tribes, that people pass these stories on?
Yeah, not only do we do it in our tribe for our children and for our people to learn their own some of their own culture, but I do a lot of lectures at schools. I do lectures at like UVM, St. Mike's, and Middlebury College, and Melody does stuff at Champlain. We not only provide these stories, like I said, for our own people, but we don't want them to be lost, because part of my job as chief is to carry those stories and to carry some of those traditions on, and that way they're there, so when I leave this earth, they'll still be there, just like some of our citizens, like the Bruchaks. They're pretty famous now as authors, and you got the Fred Wisemans of the world who are doing more of the data, data behind a lot of it. So there's a few. We just had a new one of our citizens, Brian Chenevert, who did Azaban's Journeys, which is about a raccoon. It's one of our stories, and they're doing a play about it now.
I know that. They had it on, whether I saw it on Facebook or something.
New Hampshire has picked it up, and they made a children's play out of it.
Great.
So these are the things that are really promoting how people can get familiar with us and get used to it.
Oh, great. You have a hands full here. So being chief, is that an elected position? You get elected to that position? Is it a term sort of thing, or?
Yeah, for our tribe, each tribe can determine how they run their government.
Okay.
For our tribe, I'm elected.
Yeah.
There are some tribes that were hereditary, that were
passed
handed
down,
down.
right.
Because I think Homer was handed it down to April. And
Yeah, his daughter,
right.
right.
But I think they have changed that now. It's no longer hereditary. But I mean, we're elected because I always went from the premise that if you don't have the support of your people, then you can't be a good leader.
Right.
Because who are you representing?
Right.
You know, they elect me, and I serve for as long as I can do my duties, or until they don't feel that I'm able to.
What are those duties? I mean,
well, what I do is I'm kind of the face of our tribe.
Right.
So, like, the decisions are really made by the council. So if I need to have something specific that's going to affect the people, then I have to go back to the council and say, hey,
yeah.
you know, let me put it in terms, it's like being a mayor of a small city, is that, you know, you're the face and you're doing the day-to-day activities and interacting with the different nations and state government and city government and making all these
24/7 jobs.
making all these deals. and then, you know, but you're working for the people. Right. And people can they call me all hours, from anything like I'm looking for my heritage to I have a child who is being taken away by DCF.
Oh, wow.
To I can't feed my family to I don't know where to get wood. You know, so we get
personal.
We get
stuff.
everything from A to Z. Wow. And so basically that's what I do.
That's great. So do you weigh in, because I know Melody talked about you feeling of being stewards of the land. That's a real focus of the Abenaki. Do you testify at all about some of the things we're up to, like Lake Champlain and cleaning up that lake and the waters and wind towers? And do you weigh in on those things? Because I would think maybe it's not a really good thing for you. I'm thinking.
I don't want to take all of this, but I'm actually on the Sea Grant program.
Oh, are you really?
I'm on the advisory committee for the Sea Grant program, which handles the Lake Champlain.
We cover the Lake Champlain water cleanup here a lot, and we've had several shows on wind towers, but the water cleanup thing just,
Yeah, I've testified many times, and we have our tribal land. We work with the Fish and Wildlife on the wildlife management areas to gather stuff. We can go on and on, but
does the council weigh in on these? Because that's pretty basic to Indian people, right? The land.
And we also, it depends. So you can go on to and look at our minutes.
Yeah.
And we weigh in on just about everything that we can, and hopefully people are listening to us. And we have people that weigh in on certain issues from the commission at the behest of the tribe. So like Rich Holshoe is working right now on the sale of Vermont Yankee for Elnu people, and I don't remember
That's
who's...
for Nulhegan too.
And Nulhegan.
Are they down in that area there, the Elnu? Is that?
We're in Jamaica, Vermont.
Oh, yes, of course, that's right. Well, I did a big show. I went down to one of the hearings, and we did a show on the closing of Vermont Yankee, which was very interesting. So.
There's, like Carol Irons has done a lot of work on lots of land usage issues, and we've been trying to work much more closely with land management plans. I forget the last group we were doing, but Forest Service basically. We tried to weigh in the first time when I was on the commission on the windmills that were going up.
Watch this.
We got shot down too.
It's supposed to be non-political, but I get going on some of these things because when they blast off the top of the mountain, it doesn't grow back.
But you have to understand the mountains are part of our creation stories.
Right.
Those are people, and they're very important, and they're sacred spaces. So I know every time I live near Smuggler's Notch, and every time I see go by the mountain that's all carved up and defiled, and I'm like, why would anybody want to stare at a mountain
because
like this?
when they find a new technology and they take down the wind towers, it won't be a peak at the top of that, it'll just be flat.
And we have salvage archaeology here in Vermont, so like if a site isn't threatened, then they aren't going to conserve it. They aren't going to be they're trying not to dig everything up, right? So that you can preserve it in the future if new technologies come out or can be better, whatever. But places like the tops of mountains, those are sacred places for us. We don't just live there. So if there's a site there, it's not been threatened, right? And so we have to be looking at those, and that's one of the key things about those wind towers is, okay, so have you looked and made sure that we don't have sacred sites there?
Right.
Has there any consideration been done? Because
Probably
people aren't
not.
going to just go up there and start digging.
Well, they won't
so.
even listen to a lot of the neighbors with the health issues that they're complaining about. So I think it's gotten better with them accepting, hearing testimony now, but
we're
it's
also
been
doing,
bad.
just to let you know, it was a perfect segue that Nulhegan actually created a sign, a poster, that it says, "Welcome to Undukana. Please respect our land. You're in the home of the Western Abenaki people." And it has all 4 tribes on. And we're asking people if they want to support us that they can get these posters and they can display them in their windows for
wonderful.
businesses.
Right.
So we brought them at the Church Street event and we got rid of a few of those there. And
Right.
we're going to be at Shelburne Farms on the 15th. We'll have them there. But if people want to contact us, I mean, we're asking for, if somebody wants to donate $20, we'll
Right.
send them
Nice.
a poster. And it's kind of reminding people as they walk by that, please protect the land while you're
Right.
here.
Wow.
And I think
That's
they just
great.
did an article in the Edison Independent on
Did they?
that whole poster.
Excellent. So, Don, you were just appointed by T.J. Donovan, who is our AG, to serve, and I have to read this because it's a very long title, the Racial Disparities in Criminal and Juvenile Justice Panel. What is that about? Obviously, you're there to represent the people that are
Well, I
involved
think-
in our correction system? Or?
Well, I think that there's a whole realm of things in that group. There's Department of Children and Families, there's Department of Corrections,
Right.
there's the Vermont State Police, there's the court systems. So basically, this panel is taking a look at racial disparities within the criminal justice and law enforcement
Oh, good.
agencies and saying, where is there a breakdown? Is there profiling? Is there systemic racism?
Yeah.
What is the issues that we can maybe address in policy? And for instance, we have a certain charge that we have to provide to the legislators, like a report. But like, I'll give you for an example, like corrections, right? They allow certain items to be brought into the prison for religious purposes. Well, they allow oil, right? But we don't typically, Native people don't use oil, so we would like to say, well, are they allowed to have an eagle feather? Or are they allowed to have something that might be more specific to their needs?
Right.
Not just a blanket, this is what's approved and this is
Right.
what you get. Same with DCF, the Indian Child Welfare. How many, try to extend that down to us. I mean, that's just
Yeah,
from the
no, I
Native
can
side, but it comes from
Right.
all minorities and how is the court system and the criminal justice system dealing
the
with
people, right.
with racial issues.
Sure.
And now that they've
Are they
created
understanding it more these days? I mean, it seems to me there's a lot of attention on racial inequality, and so it's sort of bubbled up to the top again.
I have to say that the Vermont State Police formed a committee of a lot of people, and they've actually done a really great
Yeah,
job and
great.
turned things around. Like, their statistics are much better now
Yeah.
than they used to be. And I think if they can adopt that model, there's a new panel that just got approved
Really great.
by the governor for racial systemic
Great.
disparities within state
I'm
government.
very impressed with the commissioner, Commissioner Anderson. I had him on the show and talking about opioid crisis, and he was a really good guy. Just very wants to do the right thing from a equity and safety perspective.
And I think most of the panels do. I don't know
Yeah.
if Melody has run into this, but most people want to do the right thing. They just don't know how, and they just
Right.
don't know what the right thing is.
Right.
So
You're right.
sometimes people end up not doing anything.
Yeah.
So I think part of our jobs is to direct them and give them insights on what our needs are and how do you take care of that.
That's
and with every ethnic minority, I mean, they can weigh in on their own issues. We can't speak for them,
Right.
but we can speak for ourselves.
That's great. So when we had lunch, Melody, you talked about, I asked you about, is there a religion? Is there something that everybody believes in? You said, and I wrote the quote, you said Native people are place-based instead of church-based. And could you tell, I just thought that was a great quote. I just thought it was about self and where you are, and could you talk about that?
And here's the thing, what is tradition? How far back does tradition go? Because for many indigenous people, if you look at their history and missionaries coming in, and for us it was the Jesuits, most people here have been Catholic for 400 years.
Right.
So for some people, they go to church. But at the other end of the scale, we go outside, and this is the place where God exists for us. Mm-hmm. We don't carry it around in a book, right? So if you take me out of this place and you take me out of, I work at Champlain College. So every day when I go to work and I get to look out on the lake and I see Adzioto is sitting there looking at us, right? That's our transformer. The place where God exists for us is right there in Lake Champlain. If you take me out of this environment, I don't make sense. And so indigenous spirituality tends to be place-based, because it's about creation, who you are as a person, how you fit into all of creation. So that's what I meant. One of my friends, Frog, he's a citizen of Elnu. He told me this story. He's like, the best way to describe the way we think about the world is that if, for people who want to worship, if they're in the dominant society, they will build a church. And for us, doesn't matter if you build a church or if you build it and it burns down, it's the place that you're on. Right. That is what matters the most. So it doesn't matter if we have a church. It matters if we, our feet are connected to the ground. It matters that we connect to creation around us and honor all of those other relations that we have, all of the non-human persons that we see every single day.
Oh, I love it. Excellent. Because I think I go to church. And it's a place that reminds me of what it's all about. I always tell people by Friday I sort of forget. So if I go on Sunday, it's like, get back on track. But you're surrounded by
and you have to understand, we're not disconnected from our source. Like, our source isn't out there somewhere. Like, it's around us all the time. Right. Our ancestors are right here. In other words, they walk among us. We may not be able to see them, but we feel them. They guide us. We're not disconnected, like somehow there's something way out there that we strive to touch. We can touch it every day. Right. And we absorb it every day, and we give back to it every day. So it's hard to explain that.
We were not kicked out of our Eden.
Yeah.
There's a statement. Interesting. Because we kicked out because we did the wrong thing. Wow, that's a heavy concept. You're in your Eden and you're staying there because that's where you belong.
Go ahead.
No, I was going to say, but you also have to understand that we look at things as we're but one strand of the web. In other words, what we do to the earth, we do to ourselves. Now, Mother Earth will be here when we're gone. Right. It's already been proven. The dinosaurs went extinct. Right. Many things have come and gone, but she has still been here. Now, we will be here for as long until we start thinking we're above that and trying to do something we shouldn't, and then maybe we'll go extinct, but she's going to keep going. So we're not the dominant force. Right. Once we think we're that arrogant, we're going to destroy ourselves. Right. That we're just a piece of it, but we were given the responsibility of being stewards over things to help, but not be a dominion over it, right?
We are on the web of creation. We are standing next to all of those other pieces of creation, and we are the youngest members of it. So we have something to learn from everything. Right. So there is a lack of ego in that, and ego has no place in that whole web, right? And so really what's broken is being able to all of those people who don't realize that they all should be on that circle with us. I would like to formally invite everyone to come back to the circle of creation.
Center. Right, right. Well, that sort of ties in a little bit with the revitalization effort. that you were talking about. Could you both explain what that is and how important it is to, because I was thinking, how do you keep kids, because you're not in a place, in like a camp or something, but and
we don't have a reservation.
Reservation, thank you. I just went blank. So the kids are out amongst the kids that go to school and stuff. How do you keep the traditions? It's so focused on home and the strength of the parents and the people around them, right? Because could get easily absorbed into the public schools and the kids, right? Mm-hmm. Or how do you keep your kids really strong in who you are?
Yeah, well,
would you like to go first?
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
The way I look at it is that before our ancestors were basically eliminated or systematically eliminated, all of the families were close, and they taught their children.
Right.
And our structure was that the kids couldn't really do a lot of work, and the elderly grandparents couldn't do a lot of work, but the parents would be out doing things. So the grandparents would teach the children,
for sure.
And then as they got older, the parents would become the grandkids.
Yeah, right.
And then of course that gets severed, right? Even today, even in Euro-American world, that used to be somewhat of the case, but it got severed.
Everybody's moved far away.
The great thing with our culture is that because it was such family-based, the families continue to teach their children no matter where they are. Right? The great thing, though, about how we supplement that is the modern technology, is that because of the social media sites and our websites and all that stuff, we can stay interconnected no matter where we are and still do teaching. And then we make sure to come together as you would in a family reunion. We call it rendezvous. We do it once or twice a month or whenever we can, and bring a whole bunch of people together and then teach. And then we go back, and then the families then start teaching them. So we stay connected, but it's only as good as the family structure that is willing to teach their children.
Because we camp down in Gettysburg a lot, and of course the Amish are all throughout Pennsylvania. And you look and you wonder, because they're pretty strict, and how they manage to do that with their kids who are amongst the regular population. You just have to admire them, that there's some strength there to keep the kids focused.
Yeah, we'll use our language, for instance, is that we have a website, Jesse Bruchek, he has a website to teach about language, so anybody can go there. And then you also have like a Facebook page that him and Ely Jobert from Odanak, that actually they work together to teach other people. But then there's supplemented with actual classes that they go and teach in different locations.
Is it a common language amongst all the tribes, or is it a different dialect, I guess, or what we would call it?
It's Western Abenaki.
Oh, is it?
Western Abenaki.
So we only have 5 minutes, and I wanted to talk about the revitalization. So
go ahead.
Jump right in. I don't want to lose that.
And that's what.
It's part of the revitalization.
To go back to what he was saying, probably one of the best examples of us being all together but not being together. For the most part, most people seem to live in Vermont or New Hampshire area, in our traditional homeland. But then you get people like Lynn Clow, who lives in Hawaii, and she's teaching her grandkids from the website, and she's connecting, like she's doing videos, and it's really cool. So she's always connected to us. And there's a lot of ways to be connected, right? This is the best time to be connected. But you look at Missisquoi, they're doing the Bring Back Your Native events. So anything people want to do to relearn culture, or just get together and think things through. What does culture mean? Should we be, we shouldn't be cooking with clay pots, or we shouldn't be cooking in birch bark buckets. I like my pots and pans. And that's part of being a living, breathing culture. So everyone deciding together, what do you bring forward?
It's what's in the pots, right, that count?
Yeah. So what do you bring forward as a people? And it's really about core values. And that goes back to storytelling. Because what are stories really? They are your guideposts. They're your flashlights in the dark. They tell you what your people believe and how to act within it. And it has history and spirituality and culture, and politics, and it's got all of these things that are within it that
And lessons.
and
lessons, right?
life lessons.
Yeah.
And I think that the stories are probably some of the most important things that we need to look at. I mean, when you look at some of our stories, it talks about, for instance, Gluskabi shooting an arrow into the ash trees, and out walked men, women, and children. Women weren't created for men. We were all together,
Now
and we
you're
were a
talking.
society. So right there, you can tell anything you want to know about a people by what they believe in and what they hold most dear. So for me, it's about each other, and it's about community, no matter how far away. Like, I still talk to Lynn. I love Lynn, and I love all the people. I mean, we always, you can always fight with your family, but at the end of the day, you still love them.
Yes, right.
I think that's the key here
That's
to
great.
revitalization.
Is there an official effort? I mean,
Yeah.
there's a group, there's something happening that just keeps us going. So
Each group. And there's culture bearers that all have their individual things that they want to promote or do or teach. So
Right. That's why some people are teaching language. Some people are teaching how to do baskets, how some people are teaching our cultural. Some people are, some people are teaching ethnobotany when it comes to what our food sovereignty.
That's great.
So everybody puts in their piece to make the big puzzle.
You two exude such pride in your who you are.
Well, thank you.
I can feel it from here. I think that's really great. So we have a minute left. Is there anything that I've forgotten or that you'd like to talk to the viewers about?
I'm just going to take 2 seconds and say, no matter if you can prove your ancestry or not, be proud of who you are. Always carry it in your heart and in your head, and be proud no matter what culture you are. And I ask that people get to know us, don't fear us, embrace us, learn the rich culture we have, and there's a lot of native traditions, Vermont native traditions that come from native Abenaki people.
Right.
So don't just learn more about us.
And when people are reaching out, frequently people will come and say to me, "Oh, I feel so bad for what's happened. I'm part of the colonizers." And I'm like, whoa, whoa, whoa. What do you love about you and your past? Why don't you come and talk to us and form a real relationship, not based on guilt? Because that is really the key to all good. We are human beings, and that's really, at the end of the day, we want people to come to us. We have human beings. We have a way of looking at the world that is beautiful. And I think our ancestors, what they had to teach us, we should remember that, as well as every single person should remember that. So don't come to us with guilt. Come to us with friendship and compassion and love.
Deal. That's wonderful. Thank you. And thank you both for coming on. I really enjoyed this show. Thank you for listening in. We'll see you next week. And in the meantime, keep listening beyond the sound bites.